Was Jesus' body after the resurrection a physical body? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Luke on Walking Through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Luke 24. We're going to be reading from verses 36 to 43. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Luke 24, beginning at verse 36. Now as they said these things, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them and said to them, "Peace to you." But they were terrified and frightened and supposed they had seen a spirit. And he said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. But while they still did not believe for joy and marveled, he said to them, "Have you any food here?" So they gave him a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb. And he took it and ate in their presence. It is still Sunday, the first day of the week, though it is late in the day. Jesus arose from the dead very early in the morning, though we don't know the precise hour. What we do know is that when the women arrived at the tomb around sunrise, that the event had already happened. The women didn't see Jesus at the tomb, though from other gospel accounts we know that they would see him later. However, the women's account wasn't believed by the disciples. Peter had gone to the tomb and found the empty tomb, verifying the women's story that the body of Jesus was indeed not there. But he did not see Jesus there. From our last lesson, though, we know that Jesus did appear to Peter at some point during the day. The two men that Luke focuses on are the two men on the road to Emmaus. These men were disciples of Jesus, and we know this just by how Luke refers to them. They were not, however, numbered among the 11. They talked with Jesus unknowingly on the road to Emmaus, and he taught them from the scriptures how it was prophesied the Messiah would die and be raised again. It is only after they sat down with Jesus to eat they recognized him, and then he vanished from their sight. They immediately went to tell the 11 what they had seen and heard. Which brings us to verse 36. The two men were seemingly finished with their account when it is said that Jesus himself stood in the midst of them. Now this time they recognized what they saw as Jesus. In other words, he didn't restrain their eyes or hide his form from them, as he did to the two men earlier in the chapter. It is obvious that Jesus wanted his disciples to recognize him. They, however, were terrified and frightened, supposing that they had seen a spirit. It is easy to chastise the disciples for their reaction, but let's remember a couple of things. First of all, they knew what had happened to Jesus. He had been crucified. They probably were afraid for their own lives and could have been thinking that the Pharisees were looking for them, thinking they stole Jesus' body. Add to that they had never witnessed someone rise from the dead apart from Jesus commanding it so, and it is not so amazing that the disciples were scared by what they saw and thought that it was a spirit. Nor does this passage lead credence to the notion that spirits wander this earth after their death. Simply because the disciples believed this to be possible doesn't make it true. People believe in all sorts of things that aren't true, and just because Luke writes those beliefs down in inspired scripture doesn't make those beliefs true either. Luke is simply recording what the disciples thought. Jesus, though, wanted to put their fears to rest. He asked them why they were troubled and why they were doubting that it was really him. He showed them his hands and his feet. He told them to touch him to find out, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones. We learn two things here from Jesus' statement. One about Jesus and one about spirits. First, we learn that when Jesus was resurrected, he was not resurrected into his spiritual form, but into his physical form. Yes, we find that Jesus vanished from people's sight quickly, making many to assume that he was a spirit, but we also see him doing this before his death too. Yes, Jesus can confound his appearance so that others don't recognize him, but that doesn't mean that he was a spirit, for Jesus could have done this in any number of ways. Jesus said that he had flesh and bones, which means that his body was physical. This segues nicely into the second lesson we can learn, which is that spirits do not have flesh and bones. Men and women have spirits that will live on after death. but our spirits are not physical. They reside in the physical, but they are not physical. That is why we can't detect them with MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, or any other detection equipment that we have. And because of this, that is why many people do not believe in life after death, because they don't believe in spirits. They believe death is the end of us, just as birth was the beginning of us. The scriptures testify to the existence of spirits, however. Our spirit upon the resurrection will be given a new body. It will be a new nature, suitable for heaven, and thus will not be flesh and blood, but will have a body as 1 Corinthians 15 would tell us. Jesus, though, was not a spirit here in Luke 24, nor was he in a spiritual body. He was in a physical body. They touched him, and they still marveled in unbelief that what they were seeing was true and not some sort of dream. He then asked them for some food and ate broiled fish and honeycomb in their presence. Why did he do this? Because the physical are in need of physical food. The spiritual are not. So in showing them his hunger, he could once again show them that it was really him and not an apparition or vision. The disciples would eventually believe, but it obviously took time. We'll conclude our study of Luke, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Luke 24, verses 44 to 53, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.